back to another episode of The Socially Distant Lawyer. I'm Mitch A's.
And I'm Greg Vinogradsky.
It's our first episode of 2024. Greg, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. Happy
Still
New Year.
good to say Happy New Year, right? We're about a weekend.
Yeah, this is it. Last day.
All right.
Cut off.
You have a good holiday, good New Year?
Yeah, it was fine. It's fine. How about you?
Got sick.
Got sick?
The whole family had about a COVID, but we're good here.
Yeah, you don't look
Good.
well, but great.
But we're not socially distant, but we're still good.
Yeah.
You looking forward to 2024?
I am. There is a lot going on.
Good.
Yeah.
Especially in the legal world?
Especially in the legal world.
Yeah, and today we have a special guest on for everybody, right? Ryan Heller is joining us today, our partner up in Buffalo, New York, to talk to us. We're going to talk today's episode about the Grieving Families Act. Now, we talked about it a little bit in 2023. I got to go back a little bit now, when it was first vetoed. And now we want to talk about it again because, as Ryan's going to tell us, it was just vetoed again, probably somewhat unexpectedly. So
Yeah.
I think why don't we bring Ryan on and
Yeah.
have him talk about it.
Thanks for hopping on, Ryan. So you're practicing in New York, right? You have a lot of these cases. You've litigated them in the past. You have some now. Why don't you let us know the current state of the wrongful death law in New York?
Yes, so the current state of the wrongful death law in New York is the same state it was back in 1847, actually, when this law was first passed. It's 176 years and counting now, so you can understand why it's a hot topic for change, certainly as we get to this point. And a little bit of background on it. New York is actually one of only two states that do not compensate for emotional loss in wrongful death lawsuits. Nothing about as far as, well, the title tells you, grieving families do not have a cause of action for the pain or the anguish, the suffering that one might go through at the loss of a loved one. Damages at this point are still limited only to those for pecuniary loss, lost wages, lost support financially, and there really is no basis for recovery beyond that, which this day and age is pretty rare. I think Alabama is the only other state that has something similar, so you can understand why it's a frequent topic that's discussed.
So thanks for that kind of background on the law. So that's what the current version of the law is, and the one that's still on the books for quite some time. So I know you're a loyal follower of the SDL, Ryan. So you heard us talk about the Grieving Families Act during its first amendment back in legislative session of 2022. So that was ultimately vetoed in 2023, in the beginning of the year of 2023 by the governor. So why don't you just tell us, again, some background as to what happened with that bill at that time, what it sought to change, and why it was vetoed?
Yeah, so the original Grieving Families Act, very similar to what was recently vetoed, but as a recap going back, there was really three areas that they sought to improve on the wrongful death statute. First, who can bring claims? Second, when can they do it? And third, what damages are available to those that can bring a wrongful death claim? Starting with the first one, who can bring claims? Currently, it's limited only to parents or spouses to bring a wrongful death suit. What was intended to expand on that was a little broad at first. It used the terms close family members, which was meant to encompass siblings, cousins, anything else that you can really think of with that language. When they can do it, statute of limitations initially, currently is 2 years. It was sought to expand to 3.5 years, so nearly doubling it, which is certainly a big factor. And third, what damages are available really was meant to encompass a wide range going far beyond just the pecuniary loss. You're talking about emotional losses throughout a list of nurturing, guidance, counsel, advice, training, education, all different types of damages that could be brought under the new Grieving Families Act if it were to pass.
Thanks, Ryan. So why don't you let us know, why was it vetoed in 2023?
Sure. So the governor's reasoning at that time was that it's essentially overly broad, and a lot of the language was very vague, which some of it you can understand. They used terms like close family members, which would then be left to essentially a judge or a jury to decide what's a close family member, how far does that extend with relatives. It also used very, very vague language about the type of damages that would be recoverable, meaning essentially damages for a loss, which was, again, something that really is not clear enough for a statute. that was what essentially the governor directed the legislature to narrow some of that down, which would make the changes that we came about in 2023 after the first veto.
Okay, great. So now we're in 2023, beginning of the legislative session in 2023, and there's another proposal on it based on the governor's recommendation and vetoing it at the end of the legislative session for 2022. So what improved or what changed now between that bill that was recently submitted in the legislative session for 2023?
Yeah, so there weren't very many changes. Really, you'd expect more of a sweeping revision when the terms, broad and overly vague are used. But some examples, they changed the terms close family members to give a specific list of those family members that could bring a claim. Specifically in the statute, it expands from beyond just spouses and children, but also domestic partners, parents, grandparents, step-parents, foster children, and siblings could now also bring a claim under that proposal in the more revised version. Another big example was increasing the statute of limitations from 2 years to 3.5 was then limited to 3 years as a compromise. So more than the current 2 years, but obviously less than the 3.5 that was proposed in the original version, somewhere in the middle there. Those are some of the examples, but there really weren't many. It's substantially the same bill that was proposed 2 years in a row, other than those examples.
So, I mean, obviously it wasn't enough to meet the governor's approval, right, because it was vetoed again. So did the governor provide any further guidance on some of her hesitations? And really, where do you see this going from here?
Yeah, so we got a similar explanation from Governor Hochul the second time, in that it's still very broad, and then it would lead to a lot of really unintended consequences. Essentially, the statement that's coming out of the governor's office is that there's a lot of things that were not thought through, that this may have been pushed through a little quickly, did a sweeping change that really was not expected. There's insurance premiums that would hike, obviously. There's a lot of interest groups in the medical field that are certainly concerned about the effects that this would have if passed. And really, I think there's another compromise that can be made here. I mentioned there weren't really very big changes that were made in that revised version of the bill, when really I think a lot of that can be narrowed down further. I think the governor would be satisfied. I think a lot of people that are opposed to it throughout both the legislature and in various interest groups would also be able to agree to something there. The other option is the legislature could attempt to override the veto, which would require a 2/3 vote in the House level, which maybe they'd have support for. We don't really know. So certainly 2024 should be another big year in this area of the law, without a doubt.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ryan. We appreciate you hopping on today, giving us a breakdown of the Grieving Families Act. I'm sure we're going to get another bill that gets proposed to the legislature and is on the governor's desk by the end of 2024. And please come back, keep us up to date as to what's going on. We'd love to have you back on as soon as we get some more information on this.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
So that's it, Greg. First one's in the books for 2024.
That's it.
Thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to check out our article that came out recently on this. Our associate Bilyana published an article on this topic as well, so make sure to check that out. And stay tuned. We'll see you next time.
Take care.